Hello everyone, back tuning into today's video. We're going to have a look at the weather next week, 10 days. In today's video, this takes us more or less to the end of the first week of December. We'll also have a look at CFS V2 for the next month. That's going to take us very, very close to Christmas. And talking of Christmas, this evening we will have the 13th Christmas update. We're halfway through then when we get to update 13. We'll have reached the halfway point for the Christmas updates. So, update 13 coming up this evening. But before that, we're going to have a look at what's happening in the stratosphere. We'll have a look at the next week's 10 days as well, and the CFS V2 for next month. So a lot to cram in to today's first video. Just to say that the Chris Shop is open. So if you've got any Chris Shop to do at Amazon between now and Christmas, just click green button that says Gaz Chris Shop. It takes you through to our Chris Shop page, and from there you go through the Amazon banners to Amazon do Chris Shopping as normal. Because you're going from Gaz Office to Amazon, we get a revenue fee on the things that you are buying, and a big thank you to everybody for doing that again this Christmas. I've still got plenty of time to get presents through, but of course we are cracking on now. I'd say we're up to halfway point with the Christmas updates, so but still plenty of time to get your shopping done at Amazon and get presents to you. So go through the Amazon banners in Gaz Shop, and everybody will be very happy about that. So thanks so much for doing that. Right, we'll begin having a look at the temperature in the stratosphere over the North Pole at 30 HPA. So this is one of the top levels of the atmosphere in the stratosphere. Not quite as high up as we can go, but it's one of the higher levels. So this black line here shows where we've been with stratospheric temperatures since the beginning of the season back in September. The grey line is a trend line for the time of year. You see we are more or less at the coldest point of the year now. We actually bottom out on average towards the end of December, but we're very close now to that. So you see that with the black line, since November, it has had quite a cold stratosphere actually at 30 HPA. It has been quite cold indeed. Very lately so that the temperature is starting to tick up ever so slightly. Still under average, still under trend, but it is ticking up ever slightly. We look like we might have reached our coldest point in terms of those stratospheric temperatures at 30 HPA. Difficult to say about, of course. We've got another month where we might see it going even colder, but at the moment, certainly, we're seeing the temperature ticking up ever so slightly there. In the stratosphere, still very cold temperatures at 30 HPA. We go even higher to 10 HPA actually. So this, again, same idea. The grey line is the trend for the time of the year. The black line where we've been with the stratospheric temperatures this year since September. Again, you see we have been colder than average, but that's where we are right now. Again, ticking up ever so slightly, moving back towards that grey line. So both 30 HPA and 10 HPA look like they've reached their coldest point for the moment. We may see further cooling in the stratospheric temperatures over the next 3 or 4 weeks, but overall it looks like we are seeing those temperatures starting to drift up a little bit. Now, there was a suggestion a few days ago in the extended GFS that we might see a bit of a stratospheric warming. Not a sudden stratospheric warming, but we might see a modest warming in the stratosphere over the North Pole. That idea has gone quite a bit now. So this is the GFS extended range stratospheric temperature forecast for the North Pole. These blue colours here are the cold temperatures that we have over the North Pole. It's showing on the 9th of December, and we'll run through. And what we see as we go through into the 11th, through to the 12th, up to the 13th, excuse me, is that we keep those blue and purple colours in there over the top of the North Pole. So we maintain those cold temperatures over North Pole, at least to the middle part of December. We are seeing a little bit of warming around the edges there, starting off sort of into southeastern parts of Europe and going up perhaps towards Asia, but there's no sign of that penetrating in to the North Pole up to the middle part of December. So that idea of a sort of minor warming in the stratosphere that GFS was playing with a few days ago, it has gone away. Although I suppose you would say that we do get a very slight warming here. I mean, if we start on the 6th, that's the situation. And by sort of the 9th, we are seeing those blue colours going to a lighter shade of blue, if you like. So it is a very, very slight warming that we've got there, perhaps around the 8th, 9th of December, but really nothing at all significant. And beyond that, actually, those blue colours deepen once again. So at the moment, there's no sign up to the middle part of December of a stratospheric warming. There's certainly no sign of a sudden stratospheric warming. But it's very early in the season. You don't really expect to get these warming events until later in the winter. So we'll continue to monitor and see how things develop over the coming few sort of weeks and no doubt next 2 or 3 months. Just have a look at the Arctic Oscillation Observed and Forecast chart. These were updated in the evening, by the way. So this was updated yesterday. The black line here shows where we've been with the Arctic Oscillation. The red line's at the end where the Arctic Oscillation being forecast to go by the GFS ensembles. And yesterday evening, you see that the forecast part of this, these red lines, the GFS ensembles, some of them were really taking the Arctic Oscillation off the cliff. They really was seeing a very deep drop into the middle part of December, this period just here, with some of these GFS ensemble members telling us that the GFS ensemble suite yesterday evening was picking up the chance of a lot of very extensive northern blocking. Now, I've got a feeling when these update this evening, I think it's around 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening that they update, we will probably see a much weaker signal for blocking because the GFS ensembles actually look like in the last 24 hours they might have reduced the blocking signal a little bit for next week and going into the middle part of December. But last night they really were going for very extensive blocking indeed within the Arctic Oscillation. Remember, it's just an index that's reflecting the state of the atmosphere. It's not driving anything. Just tells you what the atmosphere is doing. So when you've got a positive AO with this black line just here, such as we have in October into the early part of November, that tells you that you've got high pressure in the mid-latitudes and low pressure in the Arctic, and consequently that tends to be a signal in winter for strength from westerlies. But when you go negative with the Arctic Oscillation, such as we see here, very negative Arctic Oscillation condition being forecast by the GFS ensembles middle part of December, when that happens, you've got high pressure up over the pole and up over the Arctic. And high pressure, very often in winter, is the way that we get our coldest weather. Because when you've got high pressure over the pole, you'll tend to push that cold air out of the pole into mid latitudes. And that is true Arctic cold conditions. So that tends to go along with our coldest weather when we have a negative AO. So this is the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles of the next couple of weeks. We're looking at Birmingham today. The red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature average for Birmingham. We've got the temperature, upper air temperatures on the side, and the dates are along the bottom. So we're starting off cold at the moment. It has gone quite cold. It will go colder still over the next 24 to 48 hours. And then into the weekend, we see the temperature starting to stage a little bit of a recovery. This is 1st of December, Friday, just here, when it is looking cold. But by the weekend, we're seeing those temperatures beginning to stage a recovery, getting back closer to the long-term average. Beyond that, through next week, and that's this period just here, we have a huge amount of scatter starting to appear now. So, as I say, the GFS ensemble, just yesterday, they was more or less solidly in the colder than average bracket through the course of next week. Now, not as much the case. There are many members of the ensembles that are still cold, don't get me wrong, but there are just as many, I think, now, more or less, that are going milder through the course of next week as well. So as I say, I think the GFS ensembles have backed off a little bit that idea of very extensive northern blocking that we had within the AO forecast last night. But nevertheless, there is still the risk of some really quite appreciably cold weather through the course of next week. With the GFS ensembles as split as this, you really wouldn't want to say which way this is going to go through the course of next week. I'll talk you through what's happening in terms of why we're getting this split within the ensembles in a moment, because I'm going to show you the midnight run and the 6 o'clock run of the GFS, both of them from today. They are very different, and you'll see exactly why they are as split as they are with these ensembles that we have this morning. terms of precipitation, a lot of dry weather coming up again, so we're not really getting the typical rain-bearing system coming in off the Atlantic at the moment that you would expect at this time of the year. We've got some precipitation there sort of Friday into Saturday as it started to go a bit milder, and most of that just looks very light, patchy rain. There might be a little bit of winteriness mixed in as well because it is pushing into cold air, but certainly nothing particularly significant. And then after that, a fair amount of dry weather for the early part of next week. The rainfall spikes do begin to come back into the second week of December, but that's a very long way off, and with the temperature side of this so split, so obviously the pattern that is delivering those temperatures is going to be very different between each ensemble member. I don't think we can have good confidence that we're going to go into a wetter spell at this stage through the second week of December. These are the surface temperatures and air pressure ensembles for Birmingham. So again, we're starting off cold at the moment in Birmingham. Maximum is no better than 5 degrees. Going to keep it cold through to the end of the week as well, keeping those maximum temperatures under 5 degrees and getting some night frost coming through as well. Later on in the weekend and into the start of next week, the temperatures do pick up a little bit. Not really talking about mild weather, just a little bit less cold, I think, over weekend and then into next week, and then beyond that through the course of next week, again it looks like we're staying relatively cool really, but there is a big split going on here, and we saw it in evidence with the upper air temperature. So we have got a few members of the ensembles that are going properly mild through the course of the second half of next week, then into second week of December, but we have got several members of the GFS ensembles that are cold as well through the course of next week, including a few that are barely going above freezing with the maximum temperatures through the second half of next week. So very, very uncertain where things go from around Tuesday, Wednesday onwards next week. In terms of air pressure, so we're starting off at around 1,010 millibars in Birmingham. That's relatively low really, but the air pressure will be picking up through the rest of the week and into the weekend, becoming quite high with the pressure by the weekend, going up to 1,030 millibars. And then through to the second week of December, maybe lowering the pressure. But again, remember, there's a lot of variation between these ensemble members. Some of them are keeping relatively high pressure going, and some of them are going for very low pressure indeed. So again, I think second half of next week through to the second week of December is very, very uncertain about what's happening. What we can say is that the coming week, this is the temperature anomaly for the 28th of November to the 6th of December, it's going to be colder than average. So we see cold and average temperature anomalies for the UK and Ireland, and in fact most of Central and Western Europe as well. The warm temperature anomalies are over in the east of Europe in the week ahead. Precipitation anomalies from the 28th of November to 6th of December are coming out drier than average, substantially so for the UK and Ireland. Let's have a look at the GFS midnight run then. This came out first today, and this is for Saturday when we're bringing slightly less cold air around the top of this high pressure. So that's how we start to warm things up a little bit into the weekend. We're going to have cold weather from sort of today through to Friday. That's locked in. We get through to the weekend and we're going to find that because the air is coming around the top of this high pressure and going down in that sort of direction, that'll be pulling more of an Atlantic influence with the air. So it is going to start to get a little bit less cold or milder over the weekend. We're probably talking about less cold for the south and actually milder for Scotland, closer to this Atlantic air. Go through to Sunday, and again, high pressure just west of Ireland, so we've got an Atlantic influence coming in around the top of that area of high pressure. And that situation continues into Monday as well. Now, by Tuesday, the midnight run of the GFS was centering this high pressure over the UK. That looks like a situation that could produce quite a lot of fog to me, because the ground would be quite cold after all the frost of this week. Overlaying that, we've got relatively mildish air coming around the top from the Atlantic. So to me, that looks like a situation that would have an increasing risk of fog, which despite relatively mild upper air temperatures at this point through the middle of next week, will probably be quite cold actually. Whenever you've got fog at this time of year, it is going to be quite cold. But the main thing is that the high pressure is centering itself over the UK and across much of France, sort of Low Countries, Germany, as well. And that's keeping the cold air that wants to push down from the north at bay. That's being kept away to our north. We go up to day 10, and this takes us to day 10. What happens then is that we start getting a bit of a ridge building to the south of Greenland. And again, we are trying to get those winds in from the north, which we do eventually just beyond day 10. To Saturday the 9th of November, we are bringing down some colder air from the north again. But this is an Arctic blast. The high pressure isn't far enough north of that for a proper Arctic blast. High pressure has to be centred around Greenland. It's actually centred just to the west of Scotland. So it is cooler air that's coming around the top, probably colder air. But it isn't a true Arctic blast. Overall, next week, if this is right, we'll be looking mainly dry and I suspect increasing risk of fog. However, the 6 o'clock run of the GFS looks different. So this is the very latest run, updated about an hour or so ago. This is for Saturday. Again, we're bringing mild air around the top of the high pressure, probably with a lot of cloud on Saturday. That situation continues into Sunday as well. Monday, yes, the high pressure is just to the west of Ireland once again. But on Tuesday, it's starting to look rather different. So the high pressure is breaking in two now. So we have got high pressure just to our south, as we saw on the midnight run. But slightly differently, we've also got high pressure building close to Greenland and Iceland again. And what this does, by the time you get through to Wednesday, it starts to force this cold air, and this is proper Arctic cold air, down from the north. So at this point, the midnight run of GFS had us under high pressure, probably quite foggy, but with relatively mild upper air temperatures. The 6 o'clock run is bringing down proper Arctic northerly winds again by the middle of next week. There, the upper air temperatures with a -10 isobarn plunging south into Scotland. That's proper Arctic air. And then the 6 o'clock run keeps things cold through the rest of next week. So this takes us to day 10, Friday the 8th of December, when we're staying cold and blocking is in there over Greenland and Iceland too. And just a little bit beyond day 10, actually there's signs that it's turning increasingly, not only cold, but increasingly wintry and potentially even snowy, with low pressure developing within this cold air. So a very, very different run from the 6 o'clock run to the midnight run. And look how much blocking we have in over Greenland and Iceland with 6 o'clock run. If we compare that to the midnight run, that's how the midnight run looks just beyond day 10. Very, very different solutions going on here. And this tells us there's still a lot of confusion, which we already know from the GFS ensembles, but there's a lot of confusion in relation to the weather from as early as around Tuesday onwards. I think the models still haven't got a handle on where things are going. This is the ECMWF, and again, very similar to the weekend into the start of next week, bringing that less cold air and milder air from the Atlantic around the top of the high pressure. We go into the middle of next week, and no northerly with the ECMWF. What we do is build high pressure, or have high pressure just to our south. That keeps the cold air, but it's trying to push down from the north. There's the cold air and the northerly winds trying to get to us, but not getting much more past northern Scotland. We finish up on day 10 with the ECMWF Friday 8th of December, looking like that. So pressure is building in the Atlantic and trying to reach northwards. I expect if we went on another 24 hours, this low would be pushed in that direction, and we would bring some sort of a cooler or colder northwesterly flow through. But again, not true Arctic cold such as we see there with the 6 o'clock run of the GFS. So still a very, very confused picture in terms of the weather next week. Finally, just have a look at the CFSV2 for the next month. So these are 500 millibar heights broken down to week periods. The first week period taking us from the 28th of November to 4th of December. It has a cold week for the coming week. Low pressure is to our east, high pressure is to our west. And we're doing something like that with the flow, with the jet stream. So we're pulling down cold air in the week ahead from the north. It's certainly going to be cold up to the weekend. This is how week 2 is looking, which is the 5th through to the 11th of December. High pressure just to the west of Ireland. Low pressure over into the east of Europe. So doing something like that with the flow. Pretty good representation. What the models are showing this morning actually minus the chance of another northerly blast. Of course, it wouldn't be doing that. We'd be bringing the air in from the Northern Atlantic, which would be cool, but probably not overly cold. This is week 3, which is the 12th to the 18th of December. High pressure or above average heights to the south, southwest, below average heights to the north, northeast, and an Atlantic flow. So that probably through the middle of December is actually quite mild. And then finally, week 4, excuse me, we go through to the 19th to the 25th of December, Christmas Day, and it looks unsettled here. Low pressure is to our west. We're bringing the jet stream through, so that would be relatively mild and unsettled. But notice we have got a lot of red sitting just to our northeast, from Greenland, just there, over towards the Barents Sea, and that sort of area. And then Svalbard also looking quite blocked. It all ties back up to the North Pole, actually. So it would only take a very, very slight adjustment. All you have to do is send this area below average heights a little bit further southwards with the jet stream towards the Bay of Biscay. And with so much blocking up to the north, we would start to tap in to cold easterly winds. So very close to being cold there running up towards Christmas. Only a very slight adjustment would see us plunged into cold weather for the days going up towards Christmas. We'll have more on Christmas when we come to do the 13th Christmas update this evening. But that's all a very long way off and very speculative. For the next week to 10 days, we've got problems. So the rest of this week up to weekend, it's going to be cold. There'll be a little bit of wintry potential as well. Also, night frost. The weekend will become less cold in the south and milder in the north as Atlantic air topples in around the top of the ridge. And then that continues just at the start of next week. For around Tuesday onwards, that's when we've got all of the confusion. Will we keep it relatively mild and dry, albeit with perhaps an increased risk of fog, so it won't actually feel that mild, but the upper air temperatures will be mild through the second half, middle of the second half of next week? Or will we get that high pressure pushing north again and tap into another Arctic plunge? I think it's about 50-50 at the moment which way it's going to go. So you have to keep checking back for more, and eventually we will get the solution for next week. Right, that's all for now. Thanks for watching.